Good morning from the garden. This batch of compost is pretty much done. It's no longer steaming. Pumpkin's growing more and more every day. Once it's to maturity, it gets this deep orange striations with the lighter white stripes down the crevices of the pumpkin. It's really cool. Yesterday was the eclipse, and here in Florida we weren't in the path of totality, so there was no obvious indicators that there was an eclipse. I did some light mulching yesterday, chopped some of the canna lilies. Chopped some of the grasses. Here's some cassava that I noticed was coming back up, so I mulched around it. Mulched around the fig tree a little bit. I planted some comfrey, the Russian Bocking 14 comfrey that's used extensively for fertilizer production and mulch, and it's starting to come up. It's a little green right there. It's hard to see, but I'm excited about that. The one difficult thing about the Mexican sunflower is that if it doesn't break down right away, it can start to take root. That's why I like to ferment it first. But as you can see, this stick here is really old. It's probably I don't know, months old. And you can see that it's got little shoots, and all these little dots are roots starting to form. An easy way is that if you're gonna mulch with the full sticks like this, is to actually split the stick so it'll decompose faster. But a little note. Little cardinal, female cardinal. I recognize that one. It's got a little white tuft on the back of its tail, which is odd looking. I don't know what that is. Say good morning to the rabbit. Hey, Mr. Rabbit. Hey, Mr. Rabbit. Hey, Mr. Rabbit. Don't worry, I will let you run around and do your thing. noticed these have started to come up right here. Just this very unobvious plants right here. But this is the Jerusalem artichoke, which grows extremely easy. Something I've been wanting to grow for quite some time. I just never got around to acquiring the root divisions to plant, but I'm glad to get those going now. So in these 2 mounds, I planted a couple of small fig trees that were not being very productive where they were at. So I planted them here where they're kind of mounded up. It's fine if they don't take. I have so many of the fig cuttings, but I did plant some more cassava, which is a little tiny shoot coming up there. The neighbor's nectarine tree is doing really good. It's filled with fruit. They're still real small, but that's where I've gotten all of my nectarine seedlings from. Is where his fruit has fallen over. I didn't even pick it, and it just started come up from the ground, and I just transplant them out. I was looking forward to having potentially some Barbados cherries on this little tropical cherry tree, but the flowers don't seem to be taking. It is still a fairly young tree, so that's to be expected, but I'm hoping that I can either purchase or propagate some more trees to get growing. Some more of the Jerusalem artichoke there. It's starting to come up. Started chopping up some grass, some of the Napier grass, to mulch this little tire bed with the tomatoes. I'm gonna fertilize these today. Probably should tie this tomato up to this avocado tree so that it's a little more stable. I saw this little nectarine tree seedling started to come up, so I mulched around it so I don't step on it. Once it gets bigger, I can transplant it. I'm kind of thinking about how I can make this area more productive. And although I do have quite a lot planted in this row right here, there's some castor oil, some pumpkin seeds, and some bean seeds, but a lot of them actually didn't germinate, to my surprise. Some of them did, and that's good. You know, they'll start growing. But the middle row right here, I planted some experimental corn, and it stayed about the same size for the last, I don't know, month. And so it's not going to get to the stage where it can successfully put on ears of corn before we get super, super hot here in Florida. So that's okay, but I would like it to be more productive. It's a large amount of space, so I'm trying to think about different ideas of what I could plant. I could make it into an annual bed, but that would consist of an extreme amount of weeding, which I'm not interested in. I would love to have an area where I just have annual beds for more, you know, traditional crops like potatoes, or, you know, in our winter, we can grow all sorts of stuff, all sorts of greens and radishes, carrots. But I don't know. It's kind of a lengthy, small area. But you know, it would be a good area for a chicken tractor, if you've ever heard of that, where I can run it up and down this row. But I don't know how chicken tractors do for laying hens. I'm sure they do okay. I'd have to research that more. But you can't get more productive than having chicken eggs. The feeding of the chickens would be what would be the most interesting part for me to develop, just in the sense that I'm not interested in buying a whole bunch of chicken feed, but you know, chickens are pretty omnivorous, so they'll peck at all kinds of greens and bugs and whatnot, but they would need some extra protein source, whether that means me fishing for them, raising mosquito fish for them, etc. I don't know, I'll have to think up some stuff. Optimally, if I had the income, I would love to plant a whole bunch more fruit trees, but I don't, and I would like to have something that's a little more would produce a little more faster. You know, if I got some laying hens, they would be laying pretty immediately. You know, you plant fruit trees, it could be years, which I'm pretty patient, but the reality is my mother may be selling this property in the next few years, which is good with me. I'm looking to move to my hometown of Chiefland anyways, but it's pretty amazing to think about. Just a few years ago, this was all just grass lawn, and to the untrained eye, this would look maybe pretty weedy and you know, if you don't know plants, then this could look a little abstract and not the Florida typical landscape. But just in what you're seeing right here are many medicinals, many herbs, many fruit trees, though non-productive. The papaya trees are productive, but the fig trees and the peach and plum and nectarine and pear trees are all still small. But that being said, you can make a non-productive fruit tree productive by growing vining species, like I'm growing the pear tomatoes at the bases of the trees. But yeah. So you could do a lot with a little space. I've definitely learned that. You know, even if I just had this small backyard space here that I'm looking at, if this was all that I had, I would have probably done strictly just annual beds that I could continuously have in production. And that would be fun. I thought about doing that with the dog yard over there where I have all my pigeon pea plants planted. But once those start developing and getting a little taller, they'll start being pretty productive. There's so many wonderful ways to grow things, and all sorts of combinations and cool patterns, and all depending on what you're wanting to get from it. A lot of people here in Florida are real strict native plant people, as I like to call them, and they grow strictly native plants, and they have native ecosystems, and they get the certified native signs you can put in your yard for like native habitats and stuff, which is cool. You know, but there's so many wonderful plants out there that can be useful to wildlife and humans as well. For example, I foraged a whole bunch of some of the wild plum varieties that we have here in Florida, and I've every year I've planted those, and now I've got like 30 probably plus little wild plum trees that have popped up everywhere. Which is cool to think that if I had to leave this place and the next residents that lived here didn't immediately chop down everything, they could potentially have so much production and fruit within just a few years. I think that'll definitely be a goal of mine if we decide to sell this place, that we can try to inform the buyers as much as possible about all the wonderful plants and fruit trees and everything that can be of use to them. It's like pretty much my view of building food forests and gardens it's kind of it's a service that I love to provide for myself because of my passion for it and my interest, but it's also something that it's kind of just something I will probably always do, whether I get to reap from the fruit trees that I plant or whether I get to harvest or anything like that. It's fun to do. I wouldn't plant hundreds of wild plum trees if it was strictly for my own advantage of being able to harvest them in a few years. It's just fun to plant things from seed. But I think that'll be all for today's video. Insane Tuna, I hope you're having a great day, man. I know you'll see this, but anybody else that's watching, I hope you guys are having a nice, blessed day. Don't forget to get out in your garden or plant something. Peace.